Okay, I have to remember not to say hi guys because apparently
Hi guys.
I have with me today. I've got a friend. This is Chris John Otto. He's an author and a speaker and an artist. Okay, and he happened to tell me while he was staying at our house that he's got a big place in his life for movies. So I just wanted to ask him some of his opinions about things. Okay, you mentioned silent films.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love silent films.
Right. It seems like that's an area of specialty to you, and you really knew a lot more about it than I did. A lot of people compare in a kind of either or way Harold Lloyd and Buster Keaton, and some people say that they're equal, but a lot of people tend to go to one camp or the other and say, no, this is the guy who's a genius. And this guy is just sort of doing what they gave him, although he had some talent.
They were both geniuses.
They were both geniuses.
They
Do
really
you
were.
do you see a comparative difference between them?
Well, they have different histories. Buster Keaton was born in vaudeville. He was raised on the stage. The biggest difference between the two in terms of the big story is that Buster Keaton became a studio guy. He worked for MGM, which actually destroyed his career.
Really?
It really did destroy his career because they didn't know what to do with him and they couldn't give him enough freedom to do whatever he wanted.
So it was that he sort of stopped the independent phase of his life? Is it like that?
Right. Because they saw he was a genius. And he was a genius. Whereas Harold Lloyd owned all his own films, owned his own production company, and he actually had a stock company that worked on all his films. If you watch a Harold Lloyd film, if you watch a bunch of them, you notice that it's all the same actors because he has a stock company.
That happened a lot in those days. With Laurel and Hardy, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
At least even in the sound movies. Yeah.
Well, as Laurel and Hardy, it was a stock company, but it wasn't theirs. That was Hal Roach. The interesting thing about those two guys is that they were both very physical. Buster Keaton's approach to storytelling is very different. Because Buster Keaton, his stories are a little darker. More drawn out. A lot more involved. But they were, in those days, a comedian took on a persona. So Buster Keaton is the man who's been beaten down by life who somehow triumphs. Whereas Harold Lloyd was the plucky everyman.
Okay.
The guy who wears glasses in a time when people who wore glasses were seen as not as a little bit weaker than everyone else.
Right. Kind of geeky or something.
Who kind of comes and overcomes. And in all of his stories, all the Harold Lloyd stories are a man against the world triumph.
And by contrast is Buster Keaton's about a guy who's beaten down by the world.
And he also triumphs. They both triumph.
They're both sort of known for having this deadpan thing, right? Or am I...
No, Harold Lloyd didn't have a deadpan.
Okay, so that was just Buster Keaton?
Yeah, Buster Keaton, that was part of the shtick. Was that life is not good for him, and somehow... So the classic, and there's all these things are genius, and he didn't, both these guys did most of their own stunts, incredibly dangerous things.
Right, yeah.
But also a lot of camera tricks. So some of the things weren't as dangerous as we think they were. But one of the most dangerous scenes you'll ever see in a film...
The clock.
Not the clock.
Okay.
No. Is Buster Keaton. He's standing in front of a building, and the front of the building falls down.
Yes.
And he happens to be standing exactly where the window is. Upstairs window. Comes down, and he's safe. Right. And that sums up all of his films.
As far as the story, he happens to be standing there. That was planned out, just so when there was no...
It's all planned out. It's all planned out. But that's a brilliant...
But they said
that's just a brilliant moment in film.
And they said if it had failed, it would have killed him. Exactly. That's just unbelievable.
Now, the thing with the clock was not dangerous. What they did was they built a face of that building on the roof of another building. Mm-hmm. In Los Angeles, so you really did see the street. But underneath the clock, there were mattresses. And so if he had fallen off there, he wouldn't have gotten hurt.
They even asked him about it. He said, yes, there was a platform, but it was 3 floors below. But who wants to fall 3 floors?
Well, you got to remember always when you're talking to actors in Hollywood, they're never going to tell you the truth.
Oh, okay, they all lie.
This is theater. When I was 40 years old, I discovered that my grandfather had worn a hairpiece.
Oh, you didn't know until then?
I did not know.
Oh.
And he told me. And I said, "You wore a hairpiece." And he looked at me and he said, "Yes, because it's all theater." This is theater. And this is one of the things that film buffs forget. Is that this is theater and they're producing an illusion.
Right.
It's all about illusion.
Yeah, I'm not sure that means that they don't...
No. And
to say
when I was studying acting...
They taught you to lie.
No. They didn't tell you to lie. Acting is a lie. Theater's a lie. Filmmaking is
Art
a lie.
is a lie.
Art isn't a lie, but the performing
what I'm referring
arts...
to is that, because I did a documentary, and even that, somebody can say, but you're manipulating what happened. But the thing is, you can't make a movie and have it be in 360 degrees around you, and this goes back to what Picasso said, that art is a lie that describes the truth. Well, it's not the same thing as dishonesty. That's all I was referring to.
Okay, yeah. Art is a lie alone is not a true statement. But no. That whole statement. But yeah, one of the interesting things is, when you study theater, community theater, the actors come down and shake hands with the audience. Professional theater, you never do that. Because you have created an illusion.
And you would break the illusion.
You break the illusion. You don't want to dispel the illusion.
Mm.
You want people at the end to say, "I wonder what happened after this." You want to create that illusion of reality.
You want to leave it intact.
So this is why the studios had publicity departments who made up stories about these people and made up stories about the movies. Half the stuff, the anecdotes that are famous that Judy Garland told about making The Wizard of Oz. And if you watch through her life and you listen to interviews with her, those stories got crazier and crazier because they weren't true. And they all started in the publicity department. And she was told what stories to tell. When you do research on the actual filmmaking and you go into the actual records at the studio, you know that that's not what really happened.
You could get away with that a lot more in those days.
Harold Lloyd, in his lifetime, doesn't want to break that. He didn't want to break that illusion.
Yeah.
And it's a good illusion. And you should see these things in the theater. If you watching them on a screen in your home never captures what they're about.
What's the difference in effect on the viewer?
A huge difference, because for one thing, a screen is a reflective thing. So you do have that reflection. It impacts you. It has a greater emotional effect. A close-up on a big screen, you're going to see a 40-foot face. The sound is usually very different. And for silent films, you can go to one where there's live music, where the music is interacting with the film. That's a totally different... We could talk about silent versus sound, because I think they're two different genres altogether. They're not film. They're two different kinds of film that shouldn't be thrown in the same bucket.
Oh, so two different arts.
Absolutely. Okay. The approach is completely different. You start from a different place.
Interesting.
So, sound film tends to project an idea, whereas silent film draws you into an idea. And is a very intimate art form, as opposed to...
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, anyway, so back to Harold Lloyd. And actually, there are dangerous things that he did. When he's climbing up the building, the exterior of the building, that was real. He really did do that. And he did it with one hand, because he was missing a hand. He wore a glove that was a white leather glove that looked like he had a hand.
Wait a minute. All of you out there in YouTube land probably knew this, but you're saying in real life...
He was missing, I think, these two fingers and his thumb. And so
next question.
He had blown off his fingers in a stunt.
I was going to say, did it happen during
It was during
filmmaking?
Film, yeah, when he was making his own stunts. And so he did those climbs, he did all his physical comedy basically
Well, you
one-handed.
can't do a two-handed thing with a glove. So how did he make that work?
He
They
just-
just editing?
No, he did it with his. He did it. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
The physical strength of these people, because they were raised in the theater, they had a lot more talent and skill at multiple levels than most of the people in the show business.
Because you had to be probably in those.
Because you had to be able to do
it was
everything.
a live
You
theater.
had to do everything.
Yeah.
You had to do lighting, had to do music, had to do a song and dance, had to know your lines, had to do physical stuff. Now you just have to be pretty.
Right.
Yeah,
That works for you and me, doesn't it?
absolutely.
We wouldn't have a job otherwise.